the idea of GCaptain. What was the idea behind it? Because you talked a bit about your interest in computer science, but I guess it's also fair to say that you had an interest in entrepreneurship, new things going on, because there's also a great story of how you sort of was a early social influencer on a Kevin Rose network. So you obviously had several interests, right? So how did this all end up and you started to start your own companies?
Well, if we go back a little bit, I got pulled into the drill ship world, which is, phenomenally different from the, just basic tankers. And I got pulled into India. There was these brothers, the Ambani brothers, Mukesh and Anil had poured all of their family money into building this refinery, which everyone said would be absolutely impossible because in India, there's just huge layers of bureaucracy. If you think the US or Europe is bad, it's built something like a refinery is impossible in India, but they did it. But they didn't have anything to put into the refinery, oil and natural gas. So they hired this drill ship, but they hired an old one because they couldn't afford it. They only had 6 months runway. They literally put all the money they had into getting this drill ship over, and the computer systems didn't work. So they hired me to go on this drill ship, and they promoted me even before I had my license to chief mate. And then we found 4 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. It was the biggest find in the world. It was a Guinness Book of World Records. So they were extremely happy. And now when you land in Mumbai, the biggest skyscraper is theirs. And it's not Reliance's office. It's their private mansion. That's where the family lives, the skyscraper. That's how wealthy. But they told me if we were American, we'd move to Silicon Valley. This is entrepreneurship. So I was really inspired by their story. And, a lot of the tech companies now in America are run by Indians. They've really taken over the C-level thing. So I got some introductions and I went there. And also, you remember I had one of the very few ships with the internet, being on this drill ship. So I was in the middle of Mumbai. There are long periods that you had nothing to do, but the internet was slow. So Kevin Rose came out with the first social media network before Facebook or anything else, and you could vote up news stories. So I could go there and these are the top 10 stories. I click on the New York Times, and it would take a while to load instead of browsing through headlines. It was voted. So during my off time, I started helping him post stories because I was so appreciative when I was on the ship of this thing. And, he invited me in. We were called, we weren't influencers, power users, I think they called us, I forget. And he was like, oh, the power users provide over 90% of the content. It's the Pareto principle, that 10% of the people provide 90% of the content. So I thought, there may be dozens of us, but there were 3 of us, right? The 3 super users were doing most of the content for the site. But he kind of convinced me to start our ski network. And then I became very good friends with the chief operating officer of Facebook and some of the Twitter guys and that. So I got involved, and, I already thought I missed the blogging window because there's so many great blogs at the time. But this was back when you had to get a server and go to Austin, put the server in the rack and compute it. Now you could just hit a WordPress site and you've got a news site. But that's sort of how we got started.
Interesting. So the idea behind GCaptain, how long does it take before you started after having the idea? Was it like you instantaneously knew that, okay, I'm just going to start GCaptain, or did you have a long thought process about, okay, what's going to be the niche, the target group, how I'm going to build it? Or was it just like, let's just start and just build it from there and bootstrap it?
No, so we went down and we were like, shipping's a terrible idea. No one's interested in shipping. It's, we went and talked to all these people and they were like, no. I mean, they had no interest in shipping. Because shipping has kind of been blind. Like I said, in my childhood, the ships used to be in Manhattan, right? Everyone saw them, and then they got moved to Newark, and they were in San Francisco, and then they got to Oakland. So my generation hasn't seen ships, and we're very disconnected in America from shipping. We have this problem called sea blindness. So, I mean, I can't even tell you how little interest. Plus, there's this negative connotation because we had the Exxon Valdez spill in 1990. So not only, but they think it's dirty and ugly, so a lot of these venture capitalists remember the Exxon Valdez, that's their pinpoint. And they invest a lot of money in farm to table clamming and whale research and everything else, but they really had a bad taste about shipping. So it was a hard no. But then we started ski websites, and that we thought each of these mountains, you had the official website of the mountain, and then you had another website that kind of tried to sell you condos and vacation homes, hotels, but wasn't real news. I said we want a site for the skiers, but very specific. So we started building these websites for each individual ski resort, and we raised $6 million, just a flood of venture capital money. And suddenly we were doing movies, and we're flying to all the continents. We had Olympic skiers on our team. It was pretty insane, and connected in with some of the biggest blogs and news sites at the time, the Gawkers, the Gizmodos. We were doing partnership and heliskis, and we did a movie. I was telling you offline, these Pit Viper glasses here, it was started by Chuck Mumford, who was one of our first pro skiers, and we did the movie Nar, and he was the star of it, and then went to do this. So it was a lot of money. It was like early Chris Sacca, who's one of the most famous investors. He's Shark Tank, one of the original Shark Tank. He was living right by the ski, so made a lot of introductions, and it was easy. But then, the snow melts in the summer, and I was like, well, we already have the server. I've already installed it. I've already coded it. I've already done all this work. Let me try a maritime news site, GCaptain. And no one read it at first, but this big bulk ship ran aground in Australia. And the news sites, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and Financial Times, they used to all have a dock reporter, but they got rid of them in the early 2000s because they were so expensive. And they went to young journalist guys who were, generalists, not specialists. So they've started to really get the maritime stories wrong, which they still do a lot. But we wanted to here's the captain's perspective. You got the union saying one thing, the country saying another, the Coast Guard saying another, the cargo owner saying another. No one was saying what the captain thought. So that's what I really wanted to do, was kind of bring the captain's perspective to maritime news.
How long did it take before you started to get the traction that you felt like, okay, now let's build a company? Because as you said, so many people have this idea that if I just build something good, people will come. But then as soon as you start building something and you feel like, okay, this is pretty good, you start to notice that, okay, but people aren't waking up a day searching for a new newspaper. You have to sort of force it to be as good that you create this momentum, right? So it's interesting that you say that, I think this was a point that Sal also mentioned in the previous podcast, that sort of like you get this big accident or big, suddenly all eyes are on a subject, and then you manage to create momentum through, now you have the world lenses, right? So how is it to sort of go through that stage where you build and build, but people aren't coming initially, and then you have to sort of, try to create a momentum and be stubborn and just keep on building?
It's difficult. No one's reading it but my mom and my wife, and my wife's sick of hearing about it. And we talked about it earlier. I was on this drill ship at first working chief mate, and then later I went to be captain and build the $1 billion drill ship for BP. So I'm doing that. My brand new son was born. I got it in my head that I needed to get an MBA, and I was very close. I only had 6 credits left, and then I was running unofficial networks, and I was trying to launch GCaptain, and my wife's like, you got to quit something. So I quit the MBA, and everyone's still like, I still only have 6 credits left. This was 15 years ago. Everyone's like, you should go back. But what's the point? I got the lessons for it, but do I really need the degree? And there was also a fear that if I got the degree, the salaries are so great in the maritime industry. If you got a captain's license and an MBA, I thought I'd be stuck at a desk job. You know, it was also, I got a pilot job very early on offer in LA, and I turned it down because I was like, I just can't. The money's phenomenal, but I can't see myself, especially in LA where there isn't many channels or rivers or things, just getting on the ship and doing the same thing over and over again. So I quit my MBA, and I kind of put up these barriers to prevent myself from doing that. But it goes back to, I think, being stubborn. I'm not very coordinated. I don't have hands, but I wanted to get in the Naval Academy, and it takes extremely good grades and extreme well-roundedness. You need to be captain of certain clubs, and you need varsity letters. And I was like, I can't do all this, but I can run and not stop and just deal with the pain. So I got 8 varsity letters. You know, it was a record in my school for track, and I never won one competition because in these cross-country races, you got like 300 people. But so I think that's what startup is like, you got all these temptations. And if you're in a wealthy country, and a lot of, especially in Silicon Valley, I mean, I joke I should have stayed with skiing. My brother runs it. He still runs it. But, I think it was the stubbornness, and also seeing like this kinship of the seafarers. They need this information on the disasters to prevent injury, we need to pull the industry up. We need to promote startups. We need to do all this stuff. And when all the venture capitalists and shipping companies said no, I just raised $6 million. This is easy. Got my captain. I'm a young captain, one of the youngest in my class, and all this is going well. And then I start this, and it was trouble. It was nothing but hard work and trouble. And I was like, but it was also a challenge, right? So you got to be able to post continuously. And then you get to that point of like opportunity costs. Like, do I throw in the towel? And then you get the thing like, it's darkest right before you're successful, right? But the thing is, it's darkest, and then you get a spurt of success. Like the Pasha Bulker was like, woohoo! Like we got 1,000 people reading this article. Like it was huge. Now a big article is like over 1 million reads for us. Right? But you're like, man, 1,000. This is great, and it just carries you on enough till you want to give up again, right?
Fast forward.
Stubbornness and expertise, right? You have to do something that the ski. I was never a good skier, never really into skiing, so it's hard for me to show up to work every day. And I enjoyed it. I loved the skiing, but I'd have to spend hours at night trying to figure out what people were talking about, writing down acronyms and learning about ski resorts. It wasn't like natural pull where the ships were.
How do you envision the future for GCaptain? Do you have a grand vision, or do you plan just year by year, or do you have like a North Star you always want to follow and you want to reach?
Well, it's, our North Star has always been to provide this, the best quality news to the captains for low cost. Back then, all the magazines that were good quality news cost money. There were some free ones, but they were mostly press releases. So we're always trying to improve the quality and improve our reach. People ask, why don't you do a print magazine? I would love to do a print magazine. I don't care if our articles are distributed on the covers of toilet paper. I don't, the distribution doesn't matter. The fact it is distributed matters. And the fact that the news is quality matters. So other people are posting, now, like I said, it's easy to create a news website. And we have a lot of competition that's free now, but we want to provide we're not necessarily the first, but we want to be quality news. So, and you think the shipping industry has been, that's the other thing. In 2008, we almost lost the business. Everything collapsed. We lost every advertiser in a period of a week. And now it's only like, we're only starting to be really profitable again now that shipping is making some serious money. So, we're planning a lot of new ideas as well too. But we're also looking, we always want to promote people like you who are you're at the crux of the industry and learning new things. And there's a lot more work than just GCaptain can do. We need people like you. We need people like Sal. We need ship owners who are writing and participating. And we need to open up this industry.